presentation, and you will be sharing screen.
Okay.
So send them, please, to the mail, my official.
Yes, the address that you gave us in the mail.
In the IMFN domain. And you want me to stand? Hello, I am warmly from the bottom of my heart welcome you everyone on this next sixth session of our conference, Music Laboratory, Interpretation, Research and Creation, Dr. habilitowany Michał Zieliński in memoriam. And on this session, we'll be having some conversations, some presentation discussions with our online guests from Mexico, apparently. I think we don't have any other. We have the we have Lacremus University, so we are an autonomic university. So we are welcoming our guests. We are honored that we have such diverse guests on our conference at Bydgoszcz. And today with me there's some audience who would like to hear you in person and on our live stream on YouTube, and I'm welcoming everyone. First, will present us Alejandro Viramontes Nunura, his presentation Echoes. And I will gladly give my voice to Alejandro, please.
Thank you. So my name is, like it's already been stated, Alejandro Viramontes. I'm a master's student at the UNAM, Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico, Autonomous University of Mexico. And I'm currently studying my master's in composition here under Julio Strada's guidance. I'll be presenting about Echoes, a piece that I wrote that is the result of a long creative process that started with the master's. And it's intimately linked with Lacremus, which stands for Laboratorium de Creación Musical, which means musical creation laboratory, and a concept called the imaginary. So first of all, I must explain what is the imaginarium. I'm translating it from a concept that Julio talks about, the el imaginario. I don't know if it's the correct translation, but it's the best I could do, the imaginary. So what I see the imaginarium as is an exercise of creativity. So try to imagine this scenario. A member of the Lacremus, a student, lies down on top of some surface that's preferably over ground level. This could be a table, a desk, etc. Things that we have in the classroom at the moment. The point for lying down in this surface is to be comfortable, but not too comfortable that you fall asleep. There needs to be almost complete darkness without any distractions. We turn off our phones, we sit around in silence around the student that's lying down. And the student closes their eyes and starts narrating whatever it is they're seeing. So with their eyes closed, with no distractions, in complete silence, they start imagining and verbalizing it out loud. Sometimes Julio will make some comments to guide or fan up the student's imagination and to help the narrative a little bit here and there. Now, I've been a witness to a couple of Imaginarium sessions from other members of Lacremus and taken their experience and my experience into consideration. I can speak a little bit about what I think is the meaning of behind this process. I personally feel that it's a, I would say, face-off or encounter or interaction between the conscious level and the unconscious level, because it is not a dream. It's very different from a dream. A dream, you're not in control of. You are completely unconscious. You can't move or whatever. You are just, the dream is just happening as you cannot act upon it. I'm not gonna get into lucid dreaming because I don't know much about that. But in this mental state, without any distractions, having to verbalize what you're seeing out loud, what you're imagining out loud, well, it's bound to bring up things that we might not notice normally. This is the unconscious part of the Imaginarium. I think the unconscious is the one that gives us our images, our sounds, our smells, or whatever it is that we're seeing in this moment. And us who are still awake are the ones who decide upon it. So it's unconscious and conscious at the same time. So next slides I will be reading. I'm sorry, but it's the most succinct way of explaining or narrating the experience that I had in this Imaginarium session. This experience it changed me very deeply. There are some moments where I talk about movements that tense up in my body, and I want you to know that this actually happened. Like my body was actually moving at the same time that I was narrating the experience. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when I'm done narrating the Imaginarium. So I will be reading now. My Imaginarium session. Do I fall or float? I realize that I am falling in a white room. I take a good look and there are no walls, but I see big beams that surround me. I keep falling and look around me. The beams meet in axis. The room is shaped like a cube. Surrounded by pure white blinding light, it is difficult to perceive anything as I fall. Suddenly, I see a bit of shadow. As time passes and I fall, I perceive that I'm moving away from this giant cube. Slowly, I become aware of the dimensions of the cube. As each second that passes, it enters my field of vision better. The cube radiates its intense light, and I slowly move away from it. I keep moving away, falling. I can already see the whole cube. As time goes by, it becomes smaller. I look around me and realize that I am in total darkness. The cube is now just a dot in my vision. Its light no longer affects me. Now the only light in this shadow comes from me, my own light. I keep falling into total darkness for a while, but I am fine. I have nothing to fear. I let go. I really don't know if I'm falling or floating in this darkness. While I am here, I become aware of my body. I take a deep breath and remember my existence. I start to feel a force pulling me slightly. Now I am definitely falling. This force increases. I feel cold in my arms, a tolerable cold. I am glad to feel it. At the peripheries of my vision, I notice some colors: gray, red, yellow, orange. They are approaching my center of vision. They are clouds. These clouds have these colors: gray, red, yellow, and orange. I also see that they are formed by curved lines that join and separate depending on the shape of the cloud. I penetrate a cloud and fall to the ground. It is a fall that does not hurt me. I lie there, observing these figures in the sky. They are statues to the naked eye, transforming very slowly. It is difficult to concentrate on their changes because they move so slowly. The cold I feel comes from the breeze that moves these statues. If I get distracted for a while and then look at them again, the statues have already changed shape. But if I look at them carefully, I can't easily discern their transformations. I decide to enter one of them. I get up and jump. I start flying towards one of the clouds. It looks like a pyramid with some deformities, tumors that distort the lines that form it. One side swells while the other sinks. It is no longer a pyramid, but a balloon. I manage to get inside the cloud and begin to feel its internal movements pulling me in different directions. As the balloon distorts, with the indentation on one side, I feel it pulling me as it moves. The balloon becomes a rectangular block. I realize that I'm fighting against the cloud's movement. which makes me tense up and causes frustration. I decide to let myself be completely carried along by its internal forces. Now everything moves slower, more serene. My body is part of this cloud and flows with it. I don't have enough limbs to move as it does. I let myself be carried along by its transformations. Everything goes very slowly, and I breathe very deeply. Little by little, drop by drop, I realize that the cloud's strength diminishes. It keeps moving me, but less and less and less. It is fading away, leaving me alone. I inhale, let it carry me one last time before it disappears completely. The cloud fades, and I am left alone. I exhale. So this is what I lived in this Imaginarium session. The parts where I'm talking about my body moving and that I don't have enough limbs to move as the cloud does. I was actually moving in a little bit in the unconscious level, because I didn't realize I was moving until I realized I could control this movement. In this moment where I let myself be carried along by the transformations, my movements become more serene, less tense, and more on the gentle side. So taking this into account, taking this Imaginarium into account, is how I wrote the piece Echoes. This piece has been a long time coming, from the beginning of my master's period. And well, the Imaginarium, I think we can take a little bit of interpretations out of it, because Julio really likes to push someone into into thinking about their own writing and how they make music and how they create. So when I entered, I had this very strict way of writing. I was writing like trying to write every day, like writing fugues or whatever, like continuing the tradition. And I presented these compositions to Julio. I was always very, very strictly criticized about the way that I think about stuff. So I think the Imaginarium session, what really opened up, if it could be one interpretation of this. We begin with a strict form, the cube that's made of beams that's surrounding me, and it has like a blinding light. This is the strict form, the way that I was. And I fall from this strict form. I don't know where I am. And now I find myself inside of a cloud that's pulling me in different directions, and I'm fighting against it at first. But then I realize that I don't have to fight against it. So I think I start moving on the gentle side of things. I start moving more serene with it. So I think my unconscious was trying to tell me that it's okay to change the way that we create things, right? I don't know if this is the correct interpretation. I am no psychoanalyst, and I'm just a musician. So this is just my interpretation of it after a long time of thinking. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about Echoes, and then we're going to listen to it. With Echoes, I realized that I could be more free with the rhythm, since the piece wants to emulate or translate the movement of leaves on the wind, leaves on a tree on the wind, and different natural movements. Echoes integrates these movements into the rhythm and into the actual piece itself. But I think the most important part is that I started putting myself more in this piece. I did this in some lyrics that the soprano sings at the second part of the piece. This is the part that says, "Siento los ecos, I feel the echoes. Siento los ecos latir, I feel the echoes beat. Siento los ecos latir en mí, I feel the echoes beat in me. Me llaman, they call to me. Me cantan, they sing to me. Me cantan, they sing to me. Me llaman, they call to me. Laten en mí, they beat in me. Y yo solo escucho, and I just listen." So now we're going to listen to Echoes. I hope you perceive a little bit of me inside of it, and I hope you enjoy it. So that was Echoes. Thank you for listening and for being here, right? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alejandro. So there goes our next part, the discussion part. I will ask the audience if anybody wants to have a question to Alejandro about this presentation, his work, maybe the creative process, Imaginarium. Okay, so I will start with my question. You showed us the literary textual part. I was wondering, is it yours? Is it your text?
Yeah, I wrote it as it was happening.
Okay, but you were planning that journey beforehand, or you, I don't know, closed your eyes, closed yourself, your senses from any outside interrogation, and you just wandered within yourself. Did I understand it correctly?
Yeah, we do this in group inside of one of the sessions with every member around. And yeah, it's completely improvised. Like you just lay there, close your eyes, and you don't rehearse it. The point of it is to not rehearse it.
So is it like a group meditation session?
It could be seen like that. From an observer point of view, it's you have to pay attention to not get lost in the thread. But when you're inside of it, it's very vivid. For me, it was very vivid. I don't know, some other member can talk about their experience, but well, I started moving, so.
Okay, and you you have written that text afterwards or during this session?
The text came afterwards. Like I was reading it. I wrote it for a part of my thesis, but that was like a month after having the session. So you have to really let it sink in, or a little bit, because at the moment I was very like agitated. I even went into like a writer's block after it, not knowing what to do. But then it slowly starts making a little bit more of sense, you know.
And you said that from that session, from that experience, aroused the composition of yours, the creative work. And I wanted to ask you, did you incorporate that process of zoning out during writing the composition, or were you reminiscing, having those memories of that actual experience, and you were putting them, you were writing them on the paper?
I think the experience helped me to write the composition, but Echoes isn't really like trying to make a programmatic piece out of the narrated experience. But in some points, I think it has the beats to it. You know, when I say that I start to let myself go with the clouds movement, I think I correlate that moment to the moment when the lyrics start with the piece, because I think that in that moment, like at the very ending, when I say "Y yo solo escucho," that's the moment I let myself go, and the music starts flowing, and I'm flowing more vividly. And I think that's mostly where you could find like a correlation between the narrated experience and the piece.
Okay, and when you have that piece already written and you want to make it aloud, make it live by playing this piece by the artists, did you say, did you introduce them to the theme and to your creative process beforehand?
Well, the people who played, the players, they've been my classmates from all of these masters process. So they've seen like every little advancement that I made on my thesis, on my writing. They've been observers of that. So it was almost implicit when I brought the music with them.
So I would say that this is some sort of an ecosystem, yeah? The composer in the environment of the instrumentalists, of other artists, and you may be influenced by each other.
Yeah, of course. The interpreters made some like remarks about the piece before when I was writing it, and I was always like thinking about those. So it's kind of tailor-made for them, actually.
Do we have any other questions from the public?
Oh. I have.
Okay.
First question, Alejandro, because on your narration, on your literary narration, you mentioned it's very specific, the changing of color on your text. So I'm wondering if the instrumentation you choose is related with these changing colors. Some instruments are like suggesting on your imagination this presentation of colors, or the instrumentation came as a secondary organization for the musical work?
The instrumentation came from from what I had at hand, which is like the people that surround me that I had in another class for the masters, and they're the ones who said like, oh, we can play or whatever. So I wrote it for them, right? The colors that appear in the experience, I don't actually know if they mean anything. I just know that I saw them, right? And I really wasn't really thinking of trying to integrate these colors like the gray, orange, red into the piece. I don't know if someone hears it that way. It's hard for me. I don't really think in color that much. I'm not a very visual person.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe our online visitors have any other questions? Okay, do you want to conclude anyhow this discussion?
I would say that it's a very nice process to have one of these Imaginarium sessions, even by yourself. I've done one of them after this one. So I would definitely recommend other composers, other creative people to try and dig up whatever it is they have inside of them, because you're digging it up, right? Mm-hmm. And it can change you. It can really help you into doing something that's really inside of you, but something new, right? This is something new for me, right? And well, thank you everyone for listening and for being here.
I'm greatly wanted to thank you for your presentation, for your lecture. I think we as students and maybe teachers from Academy of Music in Bydgoszcz may also enrich ourselves with the knowledge and the creative process you told us about. I think it's a very interesting experience, and looking at faces of my colleagues, fellow students, I think we may debate about this process. And now I would like to ask Miguel Angel Camilo Latorre Cardenas, Autonomous University of Mexico, National Autonomous University of Mexico, with his lecture, My Own Perception with Intervals and Chords, a musical exploration of the Lacremos seminar.
Applause.
Yeah,
Okay.
applause for Miguel and applause for Alejandro. Yeah, maybe big clap for Alejandro also. Okay, you have everybody's attention. You can unmute yourself and share the screen.
Okay, fine, thanks. Let me. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Miguel. I am from the master's degree from the National Autonomous of Mexico. And I am an actual student from the laboratory seminar of Lacremos of Dr. Julio Estrada. Okay, I'm going to talk about a research project that is still under development, and it is my own perception with intervals and chords. So, well, in the years that I have been learning music, especially in the field of music creation, the teaching and understanding of intervals and chords resulting from the superposition of various sounds has been referenced in the academic musical tradition that addresses the decisions that various musicologists and theorists have synthesized from the compositional styles, right? So although I consider that in the beginning it could be functional for the understanding of musical forms and the knowledge of what has been done throughout the history of music, I think in the field of creation, this theoretical and systematic approach can limit and become prejudicate the process of creation of a piece of music. What I mean is that many times the decisions we make before listening to what happens in our head are preceded by what was imposed by the academical tradition of harmonic and intervallic understanding that others have established in manuals, theatrices, or even musical styles. In all my years of musical and composition studies, I had never questioned myself about my perception of the understanding of something as elementary as intervals and the resulting sound of several overlap pitches. I had not asked myself what I hear from the simultaneity between two or more sounds without resorting to what tradition and others have said. This personal, but at the same time collective questioning was a concept that was approached from a lesson and conscious exploration in the Lacremos laboratory of Dr. Julio Estrada, where the objective was to define within the self-creative composer how I understand harmony through the unique and proper understanding of intervals and what is the sonorous and imaginary resultant of the sonorous spectrum of an interval until all the pitches of a chromatic scale. In the following exposition, I will talk about the results I obtained from this sonorous exploration of intervals and the definition of the simultaneity of several sounds. So for this sonorous perceptual exploration, first it was proposed in the class that each student in his autonomy, explore with an harmonic instrument intervals and then add more sounds until completing the 12th pitch of a chromatic scale. In my case, I took an electric piano with virtual sounds of a grand piano and made the exploration in the medium-low register of the piano, C2, to have a greater resonance of the resulting sound. Also, I use headphones to have a better quality of the sound and for the resonance. As a second point, I began with the simultaneity of two sounds from C2 to C3, first with a minor second, then a major second, and so on until completing the octave, and then exploring other levels of simultaneity with three sounds, four, five, six, until completing the chromatic scale. Something that I must emphasize for the second point is that for the listening and construction of the overlap chords, I use a tool, the program Music, that was elaborated and created by Dr. Julio Estrada in the year of 1998 as an interactive system of investigation and composition. With this program, it was possible to discover the 77 potential entities that arise from the combinatory of a chromatic scale, where the first entity is an unison that grows in density and texture as more pitches are added and varied until reaching the 12 pitches of a chromatic scale. And as a third and last point, and in this case as an autonomous decision of my own perception, I determined that the definition I will give to the resulting sounds will be by describing the amount of vibration and the speed of the sound, the similarity with syllables and vocal gestures that I could emit with my voice, the color that it generated, the sensation that I identified, the type of sound that it was, like nasal, bright, crystalline, and how the sound wave moved. What I mean is what I perceived at the beginning of the sum of all these sounds, its continuous movement, and the echo it produced until the end. I must say that as more sounds were added to an interval or a succession of pitches already made, it was difficult to hear something different or not to have the reference of the description and definition that I made before. For this reason is that at the moment I was working on the succession of 4 or more sounds, I focused on those that offered a different harmonic color by adding wider intervals or that break out of a characteristic pattern. Okay, so with these parameters in mind, I will now explain the result I obtained from some of the entities that caught my attention and what was the sound or wave image that these entities generated in me. Okay, so beginning with the simultaneity of two sounds, it was very interesting to observe how by stripping away the description and qualification of consonants and dissonance that I have from the tradition, new adjectives and definitions for the intervals emerged. For example, for the first case, C, D flat, the perception was a very wide wave vibration with a lot of speed compared to the other intervals. Also, in this case, the wave motion was more curved and gave the sensation of having an initial opening then contracted it, creating like a no, it is like more like similar to an old television signal that was maintained until the resonance fade out. In the case of C to D, comparing it with the previous one, I could notice that although the distance was minimal between both intervals, there is a great difference in the perception of the wave resultant. In the second case, although there was also a pronounced motion, the movement of the wave was more articulated, like a ladder, and its expansion was contrary to the previous one, generating a sonority of zzz, 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 zzz. And well, in the first case, the energy was more contained, and in the second one, it was more like an expansive wave. Now, moving on the other intervals, I must emphasize that the intervals of seconds, tritone, and sevenths have a much greater wave motion than the other intervals, and initial chaotic energy density is perceived that resonates for a longer time. However, this wave speed is affected by the distance between the sounds. In the case of the seconds, their wave motion was slower than of the seventh pitches. On the other hand, the intervals of fourth and fifth, although there is a vibration, I perceived them like a hollow, empty, and linear space, like the wave sound is represented by a direct arrow. Another point that caught my attention was that in some cases, the echo of the resulting wave was perceived as if the sound wave ascended or descended in its own direction. Sometimes became cyclic or was articulated in several lines. I perceive this mostly in the intervals of thirds and sixths, as in the case of C to A, where I hear the wave echo was cyclic, with a movement from up to down and similar to the sound of a siren. Okay, and another case is the tritone interval C to F sharp, that it shares several characteristics with the other intervals. It seems to be a mixture of some of them. And for example, the wave echo of this case was cyclic, as in thirds and sixths for me. And its wave expansion was slow, but it was the one that stayed the longest. In addition, the tritone gave a nasal, dark, and wide sonority with phonemes of meow, 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 like emulating a line that grows a little in amplitude and then contracts itself. Okay, moving to the next level, sonorities with three sounds. I have to point out that at the beginning, I thought that the resultant was going to be very similar to the intervals. But at the moment of adding one more sound, the waveform, the speed of its movement, its echo, and the visual perception of this changed a lot. For example, in the case of C, D, F, the beginning of its resultant was fast, but it slows down very soon. It was like a calm, crystalline resultant, but the echo of its wave contracts towards the same point, like we see in the image. Different from what happened with the combination of overlapping several seconds, where I perceived that it expanded and opened towards the end of the sound. And on the other hand, the combination of C, D, F sharp, the inclusion of the tritone totally changes the resultant of the initial major second. In this case, the perception of the movement of the wave was as if it were like a jellyfish with a line that opens and closes randomly, and its sound was nasal and incisive, focusing on the phonemes of nya, 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 like a sonority that decayed after a while. This last resultant generated the perception of several peaks that initially punctuated very intense, but in the end, their echo gradually falls until disappear. In the case of the combinatory of the conventional triadic chords, major, minor, diminished, and augmented, I have to note that after having listened to several sonorities and combinations at that time, the waveform of this was a direct arrow, with less movement and a little vibration compared to the others. Sorry. And at the end, it felt dry, with an empty space and a slow and low movement. And well, finally, I would like to mention 5 specific cases for the next levels. The first one is the tetrachord C, D flat, D, E flat, which beyond being a cluster, the resulting sound was a great sound of mass with a gigantic vibration and echo of the wave, a very marked and incisive rhythm in the form of a direct and a slightly ascending line, and with an initial explosion that expands as if they were the splinters of a grenade. The other combination I would like to mention is C, D, E, F sharp. The sum of the whole tones resulting in a dense, but at the same time, crystalline sound, compressed at the beginning, but then gradually expands to a larger sound with a wider echo. I associated it with the image of a drop of water falling into a pool, where the first impact is remarkable and then follows the sound wave expansion. This pitch amount was very bright in the echo, despite of the dark density that I felt in the beginning. Okay, the third case is the pentachord C, C sharp, D sharp, F, G, which I chose because it seemed to me to be the most different from the other simultaneous pentachords. I perceive this entity in its totality as a tight and constipated sound, but that starts with a very wide waveform that goes to a filter, and then its echo ends up being a little dense. I define it as a black hole, which absorbs the initial energy and transforms it into something new. The sonorous vocal sound perception of this black hole was of a iwo, 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 where the I remains straight and the uo is the fall of the wave that goes to that filter. The fourth case is the hexachord C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, and G sharp, which has a very fast movement because of the initial chromatic tetrachord. But when the two major thirds are added, a faint brightness stands out that gives the overlap sonority a wider density, creating a fast-moving waveform that moves inside a contour defined by the brightness of the two major thirds. The waveform that this hexachord generated on me was a smaller and highly vibrating wave that is contained into a linear and curved wave. And finally, closing with the final level that I reached in this musical exploration, the combination of the 9 pitches C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp seemed interesting to me because it was the same chaos of the chromatic pentachord from C to E, but with the perception of a great dance and like a strong rock that moves and expands very slowly through the echoes that arise from its shape and sound structure. It is the mixture, for me, of two opposite worlds that generate a gradual and continuous flow, besides having a great vibration that ends into something bright and calm. It feels like a very long sound with a slow motion that doesn't end. Okay, regarding the sonorities of more than 10 sounds, it was very difficult to me to hear what the perception of this sound was due to the sum of several intervals and pitches. These big chords generated the same dense, chaotic, and confusing sonority. In addition, there is a little variety in these sonorities, so the definition and perception are very similar. For this reason, the sonorities of more than 10 sounds have not yet been fully described with the parameters that I proposed from the beginning. Nevertheless, the harmonic spectrum of the chromatic scale for me was only perceptible as a huge mass of sound with a big impact in the beginning with a lot of high colors in the end, but it has an unclear definition until this moment. Okay, so as a conclusion about the realization of this harmonic exploration, I could mention that it helped me to understand and listen to what is beyond the rules of the harmonic tradition, the dissonances and consonances and the structural and accidental notes of a chord. With this exercise, I have realized that adding more sensory and perceptual tools about the use of intervals such as the resulting wave, the vibration, the type of sound, and how all it moves helps to incorporate more own creative tools into harmony. So far, what I have explored with this exercise has given me to understand that the resultant of several sounds can go beyond the definition of a major, minor, diminished, augmented, a cluster, or a suspended chord. In the field of musical creation, I consider that this tool opens a whole panorama and perspective to be applied to the creative imaginary, since it offers a more authentic listening that I have an authentic listening, to what one hears in one's mind and what I want to express. Say this, what I want to mean, what I mean, sorry, is that this tool can be used to create a seed or a basic harmonic idea based on a sound image that goes beyond the theoretical description that tradition has established. So if we have in mind a creation based on how the waves move, what density they have, how their movement is, what kind of sound and image we want to represent from our minds, I consider that this individual and peculiar harmonic exploration can offer new and different ways to make harmonic connection and create new harmonic colors with the 12 sounds. I invite you to explore this authentic and personal exercise in the perception of each one of you, due to it is through this exploration of personal and intimate listening that the self-creative composer does not take refuge in what others have done or established, but as a creators, we take the control and take responsibility for our musical decisions and the sound perceptive to what we listen to and what we want to express. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Miguel. I found this lecture as very fascinating, and I would like to ask the audience if anybody has a question in mind. Oh, there is our professor, Aleksandra Kłaput-Wiśniewska.
Thank you for your presentation. Do you think we have different perspective, contemporary, in the problem harmony, problem resonance, problem sonorism in European music or American music or your music? Do you think?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please? I couldn't hear very well.
Do you think that we have different perspective in Europe and America, the problem harmony, resonance, or sonorism?
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, I think that it depends on the context. And yeah, you are right. For example, here I am a teacher and I give some lessons from music. And actually, I have a student that he has a different pitch perception of listening because he has 432 hertz. So, for example, in his case, he listens different from me and from, I think, from 440 temperate affination, right? So yeah, it is different with the context that you have. And for example, here in Mexico and in Colombia, for example, it is different from Europe because you have that academical and tradition and all of these theatrices. But here, well, we have these too, but at the same time in our, I don't know how do you say that, but our folklore music, it is different. So, for example, for the towns from my country, Colombia, it is different, like a second from, or a major chord from this folklore music to Europe, right? So, yeah, it is different. And sometimes, for me, for example, it was a very difficult because I have a tradition learning and an academical learning. So it was very difficult to me to separate from this. But at the same time, how can I say that? I remember my folklore music, and then with that, I could imagine, or not imagine, but have a different perception of what I hear. So yes, I think that it is different, but I think that as a composers, I think that something that I learned from this lesson is that you can give your own definition for what you hear, right? And then if you compose without authentic definition, I think that everyone is going to understand it, right? So yeah, I think that it is different from region, from country, and even it is different from I don't know how to say, from each one of you, right? So for example, Alejandro maybe has a different perception of what I presented, right? So I think that the important thing is that to explore and to split or to separate from what tradition has said until this moment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I had a thought that we also share the same, maybe, or some of that musical context within we grew up as nowadays music world has globalized, and we also share share a fair amount of maybe some pop culture, yeah. So we had some universal context, melodies, harmonies. And for me, it's interesting that mixture of regional context and the academic context, the context of higher culture in each countries, in each regions. And it's really interesting to look how is it on the other side of the ocean. And I had a question for you. Did you choose that combinations randomly, or you were looking for particular feelings? Did you apply maybe some scales, or did you apply maybe Messiaen scales to test how these notes, pitches would correspond with each other?
Okay. Well, at the beginning, the exploration was like to separate from all the traditions, right? So we began with an interval, right? And for example, in my case, I played a lot of times with my headphones to maybe try to understand and try to not say like, okay, this sounds dissonance or consonants, right? So I played a lot of times, and then after a while, I perceived these parameters that I set. Like I began to understand how the sound, how the wave sound moves. So in this moment, I realized that okay, this moves fast, very wide or very short, and then I don't know. For example, of the colors that it is like. This is crystalline or this is nasal. This is something that I discovered until, I don't know, like the fifth time that I played this interval, and then try to explore the same. But when I have the other combinations, well, I didn't think about scales or specific chords. Yeah, something that I did, it was like when you have this exploration in the beginning, you gave them a specific definition, and I don't know, as a musician, that my formation was in the tradition, it is very difficult to not to give the same definition with something that you hear before, right? So that's why I chose those chords that differ in the pattern, right? Like it has less seconds, or it has more thirds, or it has the tritone, right? So in that case, it was like I explore with this, but like this first exploration was only with the chromatic scale, right? Then it will be very interesting to see what happens to with an specific scales, and right now with exotic scales, right? Like maybe scales that are different from what everyone knows, right? But I think that just with the intervals, you can make like a you have, well, for me it was a very useful tool to understand my perception and maybe to give this with something that I want to create, right? So yeah.
If I could have a follow-up question, why virtual instrument? Why did you choose to focus on the headphones, on the artificial sound, not the actual piano?
Yeah, a very good question. Well, it was because I didn't have a piano, like an acoustic piano. So in my house, I have my electric piano. So maybe to give something that is similar, I put this grand piano with my headphones, with the virtual instruments, to have the resonance. But yes, you are right. I mean, it changes a lot if you have an acoustic piano because it resonates with all the space. And maybe for me, it is just a thought that I have. Maybe with an acoustic piano, you can have more information, right? Because for all the harmonics, for all the sound, for the space, I mean, it may be something new with the exploration to make this exploration with a different space, right? Like what happens if I have an acoustic piano in this room or in a hall or I don't know, in an empty space, right? So yeah, it could give you a different perspective of what are you going to hear.
Yeah, and last point I had, I should tell you that I love the way you articulated the sounds, and it was a really nice creative experience. And now, thank you very much.
Thank you a lot.
And now I would like to greet Mauricio Meza. Mauricio Arturo Meza Ruiz, Sorbonne University, National Autonomous University of Mexico, towards a computational exploration of the individual creative process, a transition underway at Lacremus. Mauricio, can you hear us? You should, I think, unmute your microphone. We don't see you, but I bet that we will solve these technical issues. So I would like you to join and try to have a stable connection. If it will be a problem because Mauricio has some connectivity issues, I would like to maybe I would like to ask Miguel a question.
Oh, yep.
Okay, and we'll wait for Mauricio to join us. So you said that you cut yourself from the past. Did I correctly interpret your intentions? Do you, I don't know, you as a creative creator want to create something that doesn't correlate with the works that are already?
Okay, yeah. I mean, in this moment, yeah, because in the past, with my tradition formation, I tried to have an argument with what others have composed, but I realized that in this moment, it will be very a good exercise for me and for my development as a creator, like to have something different, right? But for example, in my case, I really like harmony. So for example, this exercise give me a complete different tool to compose something different, right? Because for example, in my case, in my last compositions, I always thought about well, what harmony I'm going to use, right? So and the rules, and well, I cannot have this with this, right? So in this moment, I maybe create something different with the sounds perception and these peculiar sounds, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Mauricio, can you hear us?
Thank you.
Can you hear us? We saw you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Can you show yourself on the camera? Thank you. And we will ask you to share screen. And we will be happy to hear your lecture towards the computational exploration of the individual creative process.
Okay. Do you see my presentation?
We can see the presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much for the time and the space and the invitation, and thank you, thank you to my colleagues for their expositions. I have a very long presentation. I will go a little fast on the first part of it. So a little bit about my background. Well, I am mainly self-taught as a musician. What I mean by that is that I began my formal studies at a very old age. I was already almost 30 years old when I began my studies for obtaining the Bachelor in Musicology, but I was already creating music. I have a master in art and digital technologies. That's the most important part of my background for this presentation. In this master, I was in a pluridisciplinary context. This means that my colleagues were from other artistic disciplines. So this really changed my perception on the creative process. And this is why I have in my catalog, a good part of my catalog is chamber music. And another good part of my catalog is composed by installations and visual and multimedia art. Right now, I'm a doctoral candidate in a co-tutel program between the Sorbonne University and UNAM University. My tutors are Julio Estrada at UNAM and Jean-Marc Chouvel for Sorbonne Université. What is important to underline about the abstract that I gave you for the presentation is that I maintain an important link with my creative process in what is in concerning the instrumental music. And my research is about digital memory, big data, and digital traces. I have come to conceive to work in two contexts of creativity, a collective creative process and an individual creative process. Right now, I'm working on an idea of open creative space where where collective process and individual process can be can be crossed. Okay, so an overview of my the outline of my presentation. I will first give an overview of my relationship with Lacrimus, and then I will expose my research project, and then I will talk about two projects. One in which that are related to my research, and one in which the collective process is the game, and the other one where the individual creative process is the important part. Okay, so I've been aware of the work of Julio Estrada since long ago, since I was very young. I was aware of his writings. The first book that came to me was a book of the theory of intervals. His first theoretical work about intervals, música y teoría de grupos finitos, music and theory of finite groups. And I was also aware of his music, and I was following his work, his music, and his writings. I've been following his work since the beginning of my formal studies, and even before that. The most important of this of the works of Julio Estrada that have had an important influence in the construction of my insight and my theory, my theoretical approach to music. Is his doctoral thesis, theory of composition, discontinuum continuum, and the book that I already mentioned. And about his music, I've been working on Ewa On and Ewa Onome. Ewa On is for Upic, and Ewa Onome is his only. Ewa On is his only work for electronic sounds, and Ewa Onome is his only work for orchestra. About my projects at Lacrimus, I had the opportunity to publish two articles in the review. Lacrimus is the review of Lacrimus. One of my publications concerns Ewa On and Misen Alpha. It's about the UPIC. I will talk a little bit about this project. It's a project where I made a comparative analysis between Misen Alpha and Julio Estrada, Ewa On. The analysis is a comparative analysis of two excerpts of the drawings. On the one hand, an excerpt of the drawings of Misen Alpha, and on the other hand, an excerpt of the drawings of Ewa On made with the UPIC. And some of the conclusions of the analysis deal with the relationship between analogical traces and digital traces. That is, the UPIC created its own traces of the process. These traces of these drawings are the drawings of the process. That's what I underline in my article. What we see when we are contemplating and looking at the drawings made with the UPIC is the traces of the process that took place when the composer was creating his pieces by drawing. So these drawings are really traces of a creative process, and we can infer information of the creative process by analyzing the drawings. And about Estrada, about his drawing, I concluded that there is a very close relationship between both inner hearing, projection of a sound, and also a very personal imprint in the whole process. And in the side of Xenakis, we have a more rationalized process, more from an idea of drawing the sound. In the case of Estrada, we have a more interactive and interactive kind of listening when making the drawings. Was drawing in real time when this was not really the case. But when we look at the whole drawing of the piece, I have some images here of the drawing. We have the impression that he was really doing it on one single, every line is done in one single gesture. So what concerns me is the digital correlate of the drawings, because as we know, the UPIC is an interface for drawing sounds and drawing and creating sounds by drawing, and the mediator, the technological mediator of these drawings and the resulting sound is a computer. So this means that when they draw their pieces, the computer was recording data. Unfortunately, the data, the digital traces of these drawings, the tapes where the data was stored were destroyed. So we lost the digital correlate of the drawings, and at the same time we lost a lot of information about the creative process that took place when the drawings were made. For example, duration of the gestures, how much time did a gesture did it took for the Strada, for example, to make one of his lines, one of his drawings, one of the components of his drawing. And I think that this temporal information is very important for the study and the description of the creative process. And we can. Okay. I also had the opportunity to make another publication in Pila Cremus about my own creative process, the question that Julio asked us to answer when he invited us to write an article for Pila Cremus 5, was about our how do we create. I also had the opportunity to make a communication at the Metasinaki Symposium, where I exposed the analysis that I just talked about. Now, the current projects, I am working on a teaching project. The subject of the of this project is the solfeo del continuo, a solfege of the continuum, a solfege forms. This is a project that will start next year. Concerning research, I am developing software for the project of Theorie D1, the theory of intervals that Miguel talked about. For example, I am currently working on this little software for the perception of working on the perception of intervals. That includes, for now, some models of intonation, just intonation, Pythagorean temperament, and other just intonation temperaments. And I am beginning to work in an article also commanded by Julio on the potential of arborescence treatment of the interval relationships based on his theory of intervals. About my personal experience in the laboratory, I also have something to say about the experience of tracking the imaginary. I conceive this exercise as a simple, but I'm not saying this in a pejorative sense, a simple and immediate economic way to approach hyper-creativity and exploration of the inner self as a creative self, a method for solving musical problems or any other problem in an intimate way. So here's an excerpt of my session. Everyone in Lacremus has at least one session of sharing la ensoñación, c'est comme ça que that's the way we call it, la ensoñación, la rêverie, the dream that we are constructing in the session. So now I'm going to go to
may say one sentence. You have another 10 minutes. And
yes,
this is the discussion part, so I may give you another 8 minutes for your presentation. So we could have some time for discussion.
Okay. So my research project, this is the title of my research project, Musical Creation and Digital Sociology, Process of Emergence of Events of Aesthetic Consciousness in an Interactive Context of Intensive Computing. I'm working on 3 epistemes, epistemology of the creative process, epistemology of the technique and technology, and epistemology of data. The object of study of my research is the creative process in interactive digital technological environments and artificial memory, the digital traces as mediators of the process, of the creative process. Traces in the emergence of a way of listening. So the questions, les questions de fond, the questions at the bottom of the research are these fundamental questions. How do we signify an aesthetic preference? How does an artist make decisions in the context of an ongoing creative process? How is consciousness engaged in decision-making in the creative? So the kind of creative process that I am working with, that I am interested in, is a process that calls for a coupling between body movement and listening. whether this listening is cochlear or imaginary. And this coupling of the body movement and listening modulates the whole creative process. So some definitions how interactivity as an artistic notion in this research project applies to mediation of digital technology. I make a distinction between three forms of interactivity: formal interactivity, in which body movement and oral perception have not a relevant role, and it approach to computation. It's like any interaction that we have with the computer. Mostly, the most clear example of this kind of interaction in the context of musical creation will be computer-aided composition by coding, by using software like, for example, Open Music, or by programming. There is focused in formalism. Heuristic interactivity, in which bodily movement and oral perception have a relevant role. And what prevails in this kind of interactivity is the dynamism of the process as a creative force that leads to the emergence of concrete musical ideas. An example of this kind of interactivity is, for example, improvisation with computers, with motion capture systems. Kind of interactivity that is more like a prospective kind of interactivity. It does not really exist yet. It's what I call dialogical interactivity. It's a kind of emergent interactivity that may arrive as an extension of heuristic interactivity. It implies the mediation of generative and artificial intelligence, as well as in artificial intelligence-driven models of inference. Net is the conditions for its emergence. What prevails is the dynamism of the process as a creative force that leads to the emergence of code primitives. So this kind of interactivity is the aim of my research. A little bit about digital traces. There's a problem with digital traces. In the first place, with the denomination. A digital trace is not really, it's not at all like an analogical trace. When we talk about traces in the digital domain, we are much more close to a metaphor than to an equivalent of a trace in the digital domain, for a real trace. Nonetheless, the term is used for talking about the problem of, for example, of traces of our interaction with digital machines. And the philosopher François David Seva says that there is a risk with digital technology, and the risk is that there is too much intensity of trace. There are too many traces in the digital domain. This cancels the function of the trace as, for example, the function of the analogical trace. So too much repetition of the digital trace leads to no more trace, which may have a consequence, the consequence of killing, annihilating the phantoms. That is to say, no more feedback for the image. The actual approach, so this is referring to the actual approach that is implemented for the utilization, the usage of digital traces to signify our aesthetic preferences. It's based on the statistics, and this leads to redundancy, too much repetibility. So one single Taylor Swift will lead to more Taylor Swift and more Taylor Swift and all the versions of Taylor Swift that you will like.
You have 3 minutes.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, you have 3 minutes left.
Okay. So I will maybe I do not need to go further with this. I will just talk about this protocol, which is a protocol for my research on the creative way. On the creative, I approach my research from the creative process. It's a protocol in 3 phases where data, where energy is captured and then converted into that an artistic domain. In Salto Quántico de Grafito, which is a series of works, I use this protocol in an installation where image is generated in real time. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry, I have a problem here, but I will reshare my screen.
Yeah, I think we should be turning to the conclusions.
Yes. So both Salto Quántico de Grafito and my most recent work, which is
We hear the sound though.
you hear the sound?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna give you some sound of Salto Quántico. Okay, so in this version, this work that makes part of Salto Quántico is I gave the public the opportunity to mix 8 tracks of sound that I created, and I record their activity, and then I analyze what they are doing the same way as I analyzed the Estrada and Xenakis drawings, and then I transfer the information to a musical domain. In Tres Avatares de Silencio, I am implying myself in the process, in the installation and the work. This is another where I make part of the performance. I am working with this idea of including the movement of my body and my voice in the system, instead of proposing synthetic sound, for example, like in the other work. This comes from my process of writing instrumental music. When I am writing for an instrument, I prefer to have the instrument handy. But if I don't have it, I emulate it, I embody the instrument, and I enact the musical ideas that I have for the instrument. I record myself doing this, and this is like a sketch. So I decided to put these sketches in the installations, and this gave Antígona en su lógica de ensueño, which is an installation. That was me emulating a bass saxophone. So I created a software to curate the data, because data must be curated. So this is one form of curating the data that I'm proposing for my thesis, in which I analyzed the video through a matrix with max, and I can I make an extraction of information of the movement. It's a motion capture transduced into these graphics that are in movement as the video is moving as well. So I create also a data set from these videos, and with these ideas I created this installation where I am performing the embodied imaginary instruments. And this is like a piece for 3 embodied imaginary instruments and 1 solo. It has also the component of the other installations where before I come into the scene to perform live, the public can also play with the instruments. So it is interactive. And I am already writing some works, string quartet, for example, with the data that I am extracting from these experiences, and also a vocal piece, but I think I will not be able to share that now. If you want to see it, I can show you later the vocal writing that I am creating from this tool that I've programmed for creating the data of my performances.
Okay.
So
I see
I
the
conclude
presentation is exquisite. Sorry to interrupt you, but we have some limited time here. I think maybe, as you said, if you have any additional examples or the materials you wanted to share with us, we are open for feedback. You can contribute, and we can send them other participants or of this conference. But we will have to jump to conclusions of this presentation, and we will have.
Yes.
Yeah.
The conclusion, mostly the most important aspect of the conclusion that I sketched here is that there is a dialectic tension between the variables that we may choose to describe a situation, any kind of situation, like, for example, a creative process, or a creative process like the one that I am putting together, and the methods that we decide to implement for the creation of the digital traces. This is, I guess, the most critical aspect of my research, on which I have to really focus for the next phases of my research. So there are other ideas that are here in the sketched here. I can share my presentation if you want by any other meeting, if you're interested in it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I would like to ask if the audience has any questions. If not, I would like to ask you one question. I saw that you used some Max MSP patches, and I wanted to ask you, do you think that that tool and tools influence the composer, or is it the idea that originates from them, from their head, their mind, that they want to express? Or is this idea made by the tools, by the interaction of the composer within the tool? Is the tool only the some kind of word that shares the composer's idea, or is the tool something that influences the composer also?
I'm not sure to understand the question. I'm sorry. What you mean is it about the way Max and could
I'm saying that
influence the process?
Yeah, the creative process, is it, do you think that the tool or the analysis, the medium for the composer, does it influence his work, or composer chooses the tool that best fits?
Yes, I get it. Yes, that's the first concern that I had when I began to reflect my reflection about all this problematic. I refused to work with. I didn't want to use open music and. But I didn't want to work with what was already there. For me, the risk was that it could influence your the way that you think about your music and you project your music. So my first step into this research was to be very critical about the usage of software like Open Music, for example. But when I did
Désolé, je n'ai pas bien entendu ce que vous avez dit.
Sorry, this is Siri. It's Siri. It's my Siri. I don't know why it activated. Okay, so I came to Max later, and I think Max is a more neutral tool because it's much more open. And the thing is that in the master, I got used to really have a problem first. When I did the master in art and technologies and digital technologies at the University of Rennes, have a problem first, and then try to solve it. If you need computers, if you need to program, and that's the way you learn to program, to code. But by having first a question and a problem to solve, and then there comes another level of influence that has to do with your level of as a coder, as a programmer. If you are a beginner, if you've had more or less experience, the more experience that you have, the neutral the tool becomes. But the problem is that in the meantime, you have already touched a lot to the tool, and it is going to influence somehow your approach. Yeah. But I have found solutions that convey to me, and right now I'm striking my head again into finding technical solutions for the problems that I have now. So I am right now. I am forced to go back to mathematics and study, review probability and statistics, because I have to enter in the world of artificial intelligence, and I have no other solution but to program myself. Yeah. So I will have to, and it's going to be. In that sense, it's also it's an influence, but it's a positive one, I guess.
Thank you very much. I wonder personally, how would classical composers explore the possibilities of introducing big data thinking, big data analysis, and the tools we have nowadays in their creative works. But that will be the open question for our audience to wonder. And I would like to thank you for your presentation and for the discussion. And I will like to end this session. It was an exquisite contest of every original ideas, and I'm really glad that we in Poland we could have that experience of the share of the knowledge, share of the perception, perspectives, share of experiences. And that's how I would conclude this session, and I would like all of you to stay, and in an hour we'll have a session plenary lecture with Dr. Julio Estrada. So we have an hour long break. Thank you very much.